Chapter 2. The light was beginning to fade as Ranofer left Rex's courtyard and hurried down the street to the goldsmith's toward the Nile. Behind him the sky flamed over the mummy-shaped outline of the Libyan cliffs gateway to the awesome valley of the tombs of the kings. Directly ahead of him, across the river with its vivid square sails, rose the high east bank and the other half of the ancient city of Thebes. Massive gateways, temples, roofs, and whitewashed walls rising thick along its crowded streets traced a long, angular pattern against the sky. To Ranofer, it was a different world, that city across the river. Here on the western bank was the Thebes he knew, a vast jumble of workshops and laboratories known as the City of the Dead. Its low, mud-brick buildings formed a broad belt between the green fields at the riverside and the strip of desert at the foot of the western cliffs, spreading north almost to the cliff's curve, giving way in the south to high-walled gardens and the villas of rich noblemen, which clustered around the dazzling white pile of Pharaoh's palace. Turning from the street of the goldsmiths, Ranofer entered a sun-baked thoroughfare thronged with the workers from every part of the city of the dead, artisans, laborers, apprentices, whose guttural speech and varied odors filled the air around him. They were clean-shaven, with the skin of color of tarnished copper. Their eyelids were rimmed with elongated almost to their temples with black eye paint and best protection against Egypt's glaring sun. Their shoulders were broad and bare, their hips narrow and wrapped in cotton shentas of purest white. Their hands, those long and supple hands now gesturing or fingering their amulets or swinging idly at their sides, were the cleverest in the world, for these were the glassmakers and paper-makers, the weavers, carpenters, and potters, the sculptors, painters, embalmers, masons, and coffin-builders of hundred-gated Thebes, and Thebes, as all men knew, was the center of the universe. Because of these artisans, full of laughter and vigorous life though they were, the western half of Thebes was called the City of the Dead, for most of the objects they fashioned with such skill vanished into Egypt's tombs to become the possessions of the dead. Even the lowliest fisherman went to his eternal rest accompanied by a little food and furniture, a length of new linen, a string of beads, his weapons or tools, whatever comforts the living could provide for the ba of a loved one, beginning his 3,000 years in the land of the West. As for the wealthy, their tombs were underground mansions crammed with gold and treasure. Death provided a constant marker for the wares of the City of the Dead, and the living brought much for themselves as well. Therefore the shops hummed with industry day after day, and the craftsmen were many. Now this day was done with the artisans were homeward bound. A few turned in the direction of the Nile, where high-prowed ferry boats waited to take them across the eastern Thebes, but the majority scattered to homes near their shops in the City of the Dead. Ranofer was among the latter, but he lacked their eagerness. On the contrary, the nearer he drew to his own street, the more slowly he walked. At the best of times, he would rather go anywhere than home. This evening he dreaded it with all his soul. Gaboo had two aspects, one noisily jocular, one ferociously quiet. There was no knowing which to expect on any given day, and indeed there was little to choose between them, as Ranofer had long ago learned. It was a matter of whether one preferred to be kicked aside like a bit of debris or subjected to a concentrated and abusive notice. Whichever it was to be tonight, Ranofer did not see how he could face Gaboo and conceal the thing he knew, and he did not know what he was going to do about it. As the last corner appeared ahead, his reluctant feet slowed still more and finally stopped altogether. He stood still a moment, took an irresolute step backward, then swerved suddenly and ran down a lane between two of the flower fields near the river. He must think this out. He would go home presently. Later he would go, because he must, but first he must think. Once past the flower fields, the lane narrowed to a path that meandered through the thickets edging the river. The ground turned marshy here. Patches of sedge and papyrus marked pools of shallow water, and the farther Ranofer went, the more the bushes of the thicket gave way to clumps of slender, rustling reeds higher than his head. He was soon wading oftener than he was walking, but the thick, soft mud felt good to his feet, and he wandered aimlessly on, trying to make himself believe that his suspicions were unfounded. Perhaps one of the apprentices had been hiding gold dust in his sandal, perhaps the other porter. It was no use. The missing gold, the wine Gaboo wanted but never drank, the grinning Babylonian with his sharp glance and his soft, insistent questions all fitted into a picture too clear to doubt. What was he to do about it? To tell Rek would mean accusing Gaboo, and to accuse Gaboo... Ranofer stood nibbling his thumbnail. The very idea of accusing Gaboo made him shiver. Yet the thieving must be stopped, and there was only himself to stop it. Perhaps he only threatened to tell what he knew. He had reached the true marsh now, where thicket gave way entirely to the dense fringe of papyrus growing in the shallow margins of the Nile. As he turned back toward the drier land, the reeds behind him rattled, and he whirled. "Good evening to you, young one," said a surprised voice. An old man had appeared through the papyrus stalks, wading up to his calves in the brown water. He was stooped and leather-skinned, with blind eye and hair like coarse white linen thread. There were smears of river mud on his bare knees and his shanty, and on the gnarled hand with which he held the reeds aside as he gazed with mild astonishment at the boy. Behind him was a small, elderly donkey loaded high with papyrus stalks. Ranofer had seen the pair often hobbling about the streets of the city of the dead, but their sudden appearance here sent his wits scattering like startled birds. "Good evening to you, ancient," he stammered at last. "So you've a tongue after all," remarked the old one. "I wondered if exalted Lord Crocodile had stolen it." "Exalted? Do you speak of the crocodile god, Lord Sobk, or only of the muddy beast in the—" "Hst! Softly, boy." The old man darted a glance, half humorous, half anxious, toward the Nile. "Perhaps his lordship is muddy, yes, but what is a little mud? Speak politely of the noble beast, as one learns to, who must work each day within reach of his jaws." Ranofer smiled, uncertainly, and the old man's face seemed into 1,000 wrinkles of pleasure. "There now, he can smile too, eh, my lotus, my little donkey? Perhaps he is not so burdened with trouble as we thought when we saw his face. Is this not a strange hour to come fishing, young one? Ra sailed through the gates of the west half an hour ago." I did not want to come here to fish," muttered the boy, immediately nervous again. Did his thoughts show so plainly? If so, there was small chance of hiding them from Gaboo. He must come out with it somehow. He snatched one of the stiff blooms from a nearby clump of sedge and showed it to the old man in explanation. "I came only to seek a flower for my friend. I must go now, ancient. May your ka be joyful." Abruptly he turned and ran back the way he had come, leaving the old man to make what he might of it. "I will threaten to tell what I know," he resolved as he hurried between the darkening fields. "I will make Gaboo promise to stop. It is the only way." The dark had filled the streets now, and this time Ranofer did not pause when he came in sight of the last corner, but set his mouth tight and hastened into the street of the Crooked Dog. It was a narrow and dirty lane. Its houses joined one to another to form a continuous wall on either hand, like the sides of a canyon. Ranofer pushed open the third door on the left and slipped into the courtyard, his bare feet silent on the rough pavement. Closing the gate behind him, he stopped and looked about warily. The dim light was kind to the skimpy walled court, glossing over some of the rubbish that littered it, concealing the smaller cracks and the peeling whitewash of the narrow mud-brick house that occupied the west half of the enclosure. The storerooms forming the ground floor of the house were dark and empty, with their doors ajar. From the rear of the court, a stair sloped above them to a single high room overlooking the street. From the open strip under the roof of this room, yellow torchlight glowed, and Ranofer's eyes fixed on it. Gaboo was at home. Moistening his lips, the boy drew a long breath and padded across the courtyard toward the storerooms. Perhaps he could find something to eat before... The storeroom door squeaked, betraying his presence. "Who's there?" growled the stone-cutter's voice from the upper room. "Is it you, useless one? Get you here to the stairway." Silently, Ranofer turned from the storeroom door and walked to the foot of the stair. His half-brother stood at the top, a torch in his hand. Obviously, there was to be no jocularity tonight. "I must tell him now," Ranofer thought. "I must threaten him." "You are late in coming," the harsh voice grated. "Very late. Where have you been?" "At the shop." "Until this hour?" "I was delayed. There was a last ingot." Ranofer's voice trailed away as Gaboo started down the stairs, thrusting his torch into a bracket on its way. There was no expression on Gaboo's face. He was like a figure hewn out of one of his own blocks of stone. His legs were massive columns, his face a crag, with a granite hard jaw and eyes black as chunks of obsidian beneath their painted lids. One of the eyes winked spasmodically at intervals, lending an eerie liveliness to an otherwise motionless countenance. He reached the foot of the stairs and stood there winking, his bulk dwarfing the boy, who was thin as a reed. Again Ranofer moistened his lips. I must tell him, he thought. Instead he said, It is true, I walked down to the river on my way home in order to cool my feet in the mud. You can see, I plucked a bloom while I was there. With fumbling hands he extricated the wilting blossom from the folds of his sash. The stonecutter looked at it, and then at Ranofer. Suddenly, a fist like a boulder crashed against the side of the boy's head, sending him sprawling. Scum! You have been some other place. Where did you go? Who did you talk to? No one, I swear, Ranofer cried. Only an old papyrus cutter I chanced upon in the reeds, with his donkey. You lie. Nay, I speak truth. As Ma'at is my witness, Ranofer dodged a kick and scrambled to his feet, shrinking back against the wall. If he had needed further evidence for his suspicions, here it was, in this accursed one's distrust. Rubbing his cheek, he blurted angrily, You need not fear. I have told no one about the wineskins, and what is in them, yet. Instantly, he was aghast at his own temerity. Gaboo had gone menacingly still. Indeed, he said softly, and what is in the wineskins, save wine? You know that already, and Ibni knows, but I did not know until today. Gaboo moved closer, thrusting his face into the boy's. What do you know? Ranofer swallowed, pressing back against the wall in a vain effort to retreat. He knew nothing at all, nothing he could prove. I know gold has been missing from the shop, he insisted. I know they are weighing even the sweep. Indeed, said Gaboo again, but in a different tone. He straightened slowly and his great shoulders relaxed. His speculative eyes went over the boy, so deliberately and in such pitiless detail that Ranofer became vividly aware of every defect in his unproposing small person, the ribs that showed, the undernourished arms and knobby knees, the dusty rag of a shenty that always hung askew on his hips. By the time Gaboo turned his eyes away, Ranofer felt more insignificant than the lowliest beetle in the roadway. And what has all this to do with me? Gaboo asked. I tell you the goldsmith is suspicious. I dare not carry the wineskins home any more, or they will— Worthless one! The heavy hand slapped back and forth across Ranofer's face, almost negligently, yet with a force that twisted a crick into his neck and set his ear ringing. I know nothing of this gold, and if you do, you had best pretend otherwise. As for the wineskins, they contain date wine, and you will bring them to me as before. Nay, I will not do it, Ranofer cried miserably. He knew he had failed. Everything had gone wrong somehow. Gaboo was no longer worried, he was only contemptuous. I will not bring them, he repeated. Aye, you'll bring them, Gaboo half smiled and his eyelid jerked. Are you so stupid that you do not understand? I know nothing of your stolen gold. No man can prove otherwise. If you would put your own head in a noose, you have only to go blabbing to wreck. My head? Ranofer stared at him bewildered. Then he felt his scalp prickle as he realized what Gaboo meant. Why he had suddenly ceased to worry, and why it was utterly useless to say a word to Rek. Gaboo would merely deny that he had ever seen the gold. He would deny any knowledge of the Babylonian, of the wineskins, of any part of it. He would shrug and shake his head over the wickedness of boys, and point to Ranofer as the thief. Gaboo would be very convinced when he chose. And who would defend Ranofer? Not Ibni, certainly. He would only add his accusations to Gaboo's. Not Rek, who would be so scornful and hurt. There would be no one except himself to speak the truth, and who would believe his tale? Bitterly conscious of defeat, Ranofer turned away and started for the storeroom. Instantly, Gaboo jerked him back. Where are you going, pig's son? Did I say I was finished? I want my bread. I am hungry. Your bread? When did it come to be yours? By Ammon, you have grown too top-lofty of late, behaving like Pharaoh instead of the gutter waif you are. Aye, a waif, and remember it. Where would you be this moment if I had not offered you food and lodging out of the goodness of my heart? Sleeping in the dust of the streets, aye, fighting the dogs for their leavings. Instead, you have lived comfortably on my bread. It is mine, too. I earn 5 deben a month and give you all of it. Gaboo's lip curled. 5 deben, a fortune! It is all they will pay for porter's work. Ranofer was struggling against tears. Without hope, he offered the old plea. I could earn more, much more, if I could learn, become a pupil, a craftsman. Listen to the princeling. What do pupils earn? Nothing. They must pay, instead, for their instruction. Who would pay for yours? Fatherless one, homeless one. The last words cut like strokes of a lash. Ranofer bent his head under them. An apprentice, then, if you would apprentice me to wreck. Take care I do not apprentice you to some fishmonger, ingrate. I could have you bound over to myself at the stone-cutting shop, but did I? Nay, I found you work to your liking. Come, is it not so? Was it not I, Gaboo, who placed you in wreck the goldsmith's shop? Only to help you steal, Ranofer whispered. Watch your tongue, Gaboo raised one fist. With the other, he shoved Ranofer against the wall and pinned him there. The boy sucked in his breath, squinting in expectation of the blow, his back pressing against the rough bricks until their edges dug into his flesh. The fists knotted together, tighter. Ranofer, with every nerve and muscle taut, felt a wave of fear that was almost nausea. With a scornful laugh, Gaboo lowered his fist to his side, leaving the boy limp and covered with cold sweat. Look at you, the stonecutter jeered, cowering there like a cringing puppy. Can you not stand on your feet when I talk to you? Ranofer straightened, sick with humiliation. Accursed one, he thought. I hate him. He makes of me not only a thief, but a coward. It is only that I am hungry, he mumbled. Hungry? Always you are hungry. Why did you not dig yourself a few lotus roots while you dawdled by the river? Many such brats as you get nothing else and think themselves well off. The lecture might have gone on for some time, but Gaboo had evidently grown bored with baiting him. Still muttering irritably, he plucked the torch from its bracket and strode down the court. Ranofer followed in silence. The invariable reaction to a scene with Gaboo had begun to set in, a fatigue so deep it penetrated mind and body alike. Gaboo went into the second storeroom, emerging presently with one of the small, flat loaves of Egyptian bread, but when Ranofer reached for it, he drew it back. Did the Babylonians say anything today for you to tell me? Wearily, Ranofer prodded his memory. Aye, he said, he would send wine tomorrow. Good. Gaboo's eyelid fluttered as he stared fixedly at the boy. You will bring it, do you understand? He broke the bread, giving half to the boy, and thrust the rest in his own mouth. I'm expecting friends, he mumbled through it. Open the gate when they come. Winking vindictively, he made for the stairs and vanished up them, taking the torch with him. Ranofer stood alone in the dark courtyard, holding his piece of bread, half a loaf. It barely covered his palm, and the emptiness in his stomach felt as big as the whole temple of Ammon. The emptiness in his heart matched it. Gaboo's last warning had needed no underscoring. On dragging feet, he padded into the storeroom, felt his way to the big water jar, and drank thirstily. Afterward, he searched through, though without hope, for another bite of something, a forgotten onion, a mouthful of stewed lentils, left from Gaboo's meal. The storeroom yielded nothing more except the tantalizing fragrance from boxes and kegs all sealed and forbidden to him. He left it and crossed the courtyard to the farthest corner, where his sleeping mat was spread under a straggling acacia tree, flinging himself upon the rough fibers. He held the bread to his nose, and its yeasty fragrance brought the saliva rushing into his mouth. He began to eat slowly, carefully making each mouthful just last as long as he could. All too soon it was gone, leaving him only the craving for more. He lay back, pillowing his head on his hands. He could have given me the whole loaf, he thought, though they are small enough at best. I could eat 20 of them. 30. The pig was punishing me for trying to defy him. If I only were free of him, if only I could climb aboard a boat and sail far, far away and never see this courtyard or the street of the Crooked Dog again. In all my life, what if I tried it? What if I ran away tomorrow? The thought filled him with all the old panic. But what would I do then? He thought. How would I live? It was impossible. He would not think of it. He would think of a day to come when he was a man and would have gold of his own and could buy all the bread he wanted. But how would he get his gold? If he grew up ignorant, fit only to be a porter, no matter. He would get it somehow. Perhaps he would find it. People did find gold sometimes, hidden away in the crevices of the hills or under an old house, buried there by someone long dead and forgotten. Aye, that was it. He would find it. Ranofer closed his eyes, smiling to himself. He could almost see the little gold ingots, row on row, lining the walls of some secret cave that only he would know about. He would take one home each week to Gaboo, and there would be no more beatings. Nay, there would be no more Gaboo. He would have a house of his own. He, Ranofer the son of Thutra. He would buy fresh salted fish, and milk, and lentils, and a honey cake. Many honey cakes. The gods would smile on him, and Osiris himself, Osiris the Merciful, would speak out of the wind to him and direct all his affairs. Aye, and better than all, he would use the ingots for the gold working. He would make a broad, fine bowl with a pattern of reed flowers inlaid in silver wire, and he would make a little eye-painted pot with a hinged lid and a bracelet. Perhaps 2 bracelets. How would he fashion them? In the form of snakes, perhaps, with garnet eyes, or should he shape them like lilies with long stems twining about the arm? Aye, like lilies. And they would be more beautiful than the moon, and all Thebes would stand in wonder before them. Zal, the master, would see them and would carry them to Pharaoh, who would buy them immediately for many coppers, and the fame of Ranofer the goldsmith would spread through all the Black Land. He would take a few pupils, only the talented ones, as Zal did, and become— A knocking sound at the gate. Ranofer jerked up his head and stared about dazedly. The stars had come out over the silent courtyard, revealing the rubbish-strewn pavement and peeling walls in all their ugly reality. He sighed, dragging himself to his feet, and walked across the court. The moment he unlatched the gate, it was shoved open with a violence that all but knocked him down. Massaging his bruised ribs, he squinted resentfully into the glare of a torch. "Where is the stone-cutter?" grunted a thick voice. It was Setma, the Nile boat captain. One needed only one's nose to recognize his characteristic aura of river stink and barley beer fumes. Ranofer jerked his head in the direction of the stairway. Up there. The man brushed past, almost dropping his torch in his unsteady progress along the courtyard. In his wake came another man, a tall, stooped figure with a dark cloak, folded about him like drooping wings. He was not drunk, like the riverman, but Ranofer drew back from him instinctively. Wenamon, he was called. He was a mason. He paused, gazed at the boy a moment, then with a moment with glittering bright eyes, then followed the riverman to the stair on the feet that made no more sound than a keft's. Shivering, Ranofer latched the gate and went back to his mat. Gaboo was bad enough, but his friends were worse. Ranofer had long been sure that Wenamon possessed the evil eye. He fingered his amulet nervously, hoping that it had protected him, but he knew it had no power over the evil eye. That required a different amulet, the Ozate, shaped like the sacred eye of the god Horus. His was only the sign of the life sign Ankh, a green glazed cross with a looped top, tied to his wrist with 7 knots to bind his spirit to his body. He could remember the old magician his father had bought it from, and how safe he had felt when it was made fast over the exposed poles through which his Ka might try to escape. Safe. Aye, it had kept his Ka in his body, but it had saved him little else. Not from Gaboo, not from beatings and hunger, not from Ibni and his hateful wineskins. Ranofer rolled onto his back, trying to switch his thoughts again to the secret cave full of ingots, but the little golden bars kept turning into wineskins in his mind, or into loaves of bread that vanished when he had tried to touch them. His stomach knotted with hunger, and his mind with worry. He could not bring that accursed wineskin on the morrow, knowing what it contained. Yet what would Gaboo do if he appeared without it? Fear dried his mouth at the very thought. He was afraid of Gaboo and his heavy fist, afraid of his own hunger, most of all afraid of the void that yawned always on his right hand, waiting for Gaboo to turn him out, sleeping in the dust of the streets, fighting the dogs for their leavings. I am a coward, he thought, a cringing puppy, as Gaboo said, and tomorrow I shall become a thief, because I am afraid. Saying it, even to himself without a sound, somehow cleared his mind. He, Ranofer, the son of Thutra, a thief? Staring up through the ragged branches of the acacia to the stars spangling the dark sky, he could see only the kindly face of Rek, the goldsmith, rising before him in a reproach. He turned over and flung an arm over his eyes. "I'll not do it," he told himself fiercely. "Never, never! Not a grain of gold, not a scrap will I bring that evil one. Let him beat me all he likes. Let him have his bread. I'll find my own somehow, or do without. I'll be no thief." The reproachful face faded from his mind, and his tension vanished, driven out by the exalted sense of heroism with which his own words had filled him. He began to picture himself a larger, more muscular self, nearly Gaboo's size, standing proudly, uplifting head before the stonecutter, defying him, smiling coolly at his rage, easily sidestepping his poorly aimed blows, and walking at last from the hateful courtyard without deigning to glance back. Then he would go to the gold house of Za the master and beg to be accepted as a pupil. Had not Za almost said he would accept him, a month before his father died, when Za had come to inquire after his old friend's health? He had looked at the little cups and armbands Ranofer had hammered out, and he had said to Thutra, "Your son shows skill, perhaps when he is older." Then the evil day of death had come, and old Miria had told Ranofer, weeping, that there would be scarcely enough coppers left for bread after his father's tomb was furnished, and the embalmers paid, and the offerings made to the priests of the necropolis. He could not even go back to the scribe school where he had been learning to read, much less think of Za, who charged a pupil's fee. Even then, Za was there among the mourners at his father's house that morning. Ranofer had not dared speak to him, but had stood watching him from a corner, thinking, later, maybe, later, when I'm older. All the world was grief and confusion that day. Then Gaboo had come, a solid form blocking out the sunlight in the doorway so that everyone turned to look. In the silence he had stepped into the room as if he owned it, as indeed it seemed he did. He had a scribe's paper that proved his claims as firstborn. Before the stranger with scrap of paper, Za and Thutra's other old friends had stepped aside, departing one by one to their houses and out of Ranofer's life. Soon old Mira vanished too. Gaboo sold her at the common slave market to pay for funerary arrangements. He sold the last of Thutra's gold work, and his tools, and his work table. Then he took everything left in the house, including Ranofer, and moved them to the street of the Crooked Dog, and that was the settlement of Thutra's estate. Ranofer found himself sitting up on his mat in the courtyard, staring blindly into the dark, frowning. He threw himself down again, pulling an edge of the matting over his bare legs. No need to think about all that again, he told himself. All will be different now. I shall defy Gaboo. I shall leave the street of the Crooked Dog forever. Ah, then anything will be possible. The golden ingots, those ingots in that hidden cave I shall discover. I can use those to pay my pupil's fee. Then Pharaoh will buy my necklaces for Queen Tai, who is beautiful and kind, and she will smile on me, Ranofer, the son of Thutra, and I will not be a thief. Curled into as tight a ball as possible against the chill of the night, Ranofer slept at last.